COVID-19 has made working virtually necessary. And this means that learning to lead in a virtual environment is now absolutely essential for entrepreneurs. How do you effectively lead an online virtual team? Dr. Canute Thompson is back to tell us how you can be a boss online. I'm Kalila Reynolds, and it's time for another episode of MoneyMoves, JA, brought to you in partnership with Exim Bank's Business Advisory Service, giving you the tools to grow your business. And make sure you watch this video to the end because I have a giveaway. Welcome back, Dr. Thompson. Last time you were here, you gave us so many gems. I really appreciated that. Today, we're talking about a very relevant topic, virtual leadership.
Yes.
I find that it's a little bit different. A lot of people say that it was fun at first, doing the Zoom and not having to go into the office. But after months of this now, some people miss the personal interaction.
Right.
So how can you be an effective leader virtually?
Yes, as you've said, it's an important area for consideration, especially since it's likely that virtuality is going to be a part of our future. I think there are three ways, among others, in which we can be an effective leader virtually. And the first I suggest goes back to an old principle in management and leadership. It was called in those days management by objectives. I think a more appropriate word these days is management by deliverables. And that particular approach is as relevant to what I call the era of virtuality as it would have been to the era of face-to-face. But the thing about face-to-face is that you saw people there, so you could kind of cow them or supervise them. When you manage by deliverables, it doesn't matter what people do with their time otherwise. Your concern is that they produce this report by a particular time, to a particular standard. This invitation to virtuality has been at us for the last 30 years,
So you're not policing what time people clock in and
precisely,
clock out, as long as they get the job done.
As long as they get the job done. And the efficient person might take 4 hours to do a particular task, whereas another person might take an entire day. What the organization needs to do is to agree what the scope of the work is and set a standard time for it. So if it's agreed that this particular task takes 6 hours, then the person who is able to complete it in 3 hours is free to do whatever they want for the next 3. Go on to something else or go to the beach, all right? Because they have done what is expected of them, all right? So it is not, so one of the things you want to avoid is to have persons individually and capriciously decide how long the thing should take. It should be decided in a coordinated and corporate manner. All right. I remember I was somewhere overseas. I was at the bus stop and saw this lady who looked Jamaican. So I began talking to her and discovered that she's from Duhaney Park. I think this might have been in Toronto. And she was on her way to work. This was like 11 o'clock. And she told me that she partially telecommutes. So she works in the accounts department, and she's expected to produce a particular report. It's a financial entity. She's to produce a particular report by 7 a.m. each morning. And that's a report that informs certain decisions that the organization takes. And by agreement, the report takes 4 hours to be produced. Might be 4 or 2, whatever it might have been. So when she emails that report at 7 a.m. in the morning, it's date stamped. I think it might be a 2-hour report. It's date stamped 7 a.m. As far as the organization is concerned, she has been at work for the last 2 hours. So when she gets in at 11, her effective starting time for work is 9 o'clock because she has produced 2 hours of work, all right?
Before 7.
Before 7, all right. So that's management by deliverables, all right?
But are you familiar with, I think it's Parkinson's law, it's called, work expands to fill the amount of time that you have to do it. So if you give somebody a day to do something, it will take a day, and if you give them a week, it will take a week.
Yeah, well, I suspect so, and there's some wisdom to that. I think one of the ways to cure that is by what I would call this second approach to leadership in a virtual space is what I call self-accountability, where the individual recognizes that he or she has a duty to be as productive as he or she can. And so having discovered that this task, which might have been new, can take 2 hours instead of 4, which was agreed, to report that, to share that, and increase his or her output by accepting additional responsibilities and tasks within the space of a day. I think there are a good number of people who are naturally prone to want to get away with as much that they can. But overcoming that tendency requires a kind of organizational culture where people feel that they own the organization. There's a sense of ownership. So to produce 4 hours of work in an 8-hour day doesn't feel, in a context where people feel that they own the organization, will bring a sense of guilt. So people want to do more because to do less is to hurt themselves, which then comes to the third element. So I said management by deliverables is the first, self-accountability is the second. The third is what I call authentic collective ownership.
Authentic
collective ownership. So I'm part of the organization. I remember in the 1990s I was working with, at that time, the Jamaica Telephone Company, and Senior Vice President of blessed memory, William Bertram, we were having a senior managers meeting, and he said words to the effect, we have $1 billion company to run, all right? He didn't say I, he said we. And he was making it clear that all of us inside there, and one of the things the company did, if you recall the history, when it shifted from Jamaica Telephone Company to Telecommunications of Jamaica, every employee had a chance to buy shares. All right, so we all own the company. All right, now, no, nothing is perfect. Company is perfect. There were issues of accountability and efficiency, but the fact is that you're moving towards creating the sense that if I don't deliver, I'm not only hurting myself. Sorry, I'm not only hurting the company. I'm hurting myself.
Because now you're invested.
I'm invested in the company. Collective, authentic ownership.
I love that.
Yes.
So how is leading a team virtually different than regular in-person leadership?
You know, as I thought about it, I am not sure that the differences are vast, but I think they are significant, all right? And the first area of critical difference has to do with what I call MBD, management by deliverables. So whereas in a face-to-face context, you have a set of halfway cubicles, the supervisor sits at this end and can see what's happening. Now the person is at home and you can't see. So restructuring the organization so that tasks which were typically deemed to be only executed or could only be executed inside the space of the building, the organization can be done elsewhere. So reconfiguring work processes and work outputs to make for easy measurement of what people have done is the first critical requirement of leadership in this context. The second I would suggest is what I would call defining measures of success. And this is not new language by any means, but measurements of success really means that although the thing is done, what are the key measures of how well it meets the expected standards. All right. Although it was agreed for 4 hours, that you were able to do it for 3 hours, does that now become a precedent? All right. That the average error rate among other members of the team was X, that your error rate was lower than the average. To what extent can you use that error rate to become the standard for the rest of the organization?
Or at least a standard for that person.
Or standard for that person.
Said, I expect more of you because
yes.
I know you can perform at this level.
Correct.
Is that fair?
It's fair, but it also requires some additional analysis as to whether or not this level of performance was affected by other favorable variables, like you were there were fewer people in the organization that day. There was less distraction. Yeah. So you'd have to take account of some of the factors that are responsible, and then see the extent to which you can scale or replicate those factors.
Right, because if somebody has more experience, you have a rookie who just started last week and somebody who's been with you 10 years. Indeed. I will expect the person with 10 years to complete the task in 2 hours. The rookie would take all day because they're just learning.
Precisely.
To what extent or how important is it to check in with their team and their emotional wellness? Because now we're not having that general face-to-face interaction. And perhaps the introverts love it,
yes.
But those who thrive on social interaction yes. may be going through a slump.
It's exceedingly vital. And in some countries, including the US and some East Asian countries, the rate of suicide has gone up, not only among employees, but also among students. And it is in part attributable to a sense of isolation, what you may want to call the COVID factor. It's important that you find ways of creating opportunities for interaction, virtual parties, using the same methods you used in face-to-face. So you have your sing-alongs, you have your chit-chats, you have your serious introspection, but you're doing it virtually. Mm-hmm. And
I think karaoke is a great idea.
Without a yes, you can do that. One of the things that we also need to avoid is this notion that because you need to check on people, you have these regular meetings. Guard against meeting for meeting's sake, mm-hmm. as a way of keeping tabs on how people are performing. But ensure that you create opportunities for what I call differentiated forms of engagement, where people just learn to share without an agenda. You'll find that after a while, the need for it will become less. But the declining interest should be seen as an opportunity to review how what is being done, but it might also be an indication that there is no need for it, and people are becoming less anxious, less isolated, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you once again for your insights, Dr. Thompson. It's about that time that we do our giveaway question, so take it away.
All right. So the giveaway question for today is, what does MBD mean? MBD.
Dr. Thompson is a man who loves his acronyms. I remember this one. Do you? Answer over on Exim Bank's Instagram page at EximBankJA. You can win a lovely prize from Exim Bank's Business Advisory Service. And now let's recap Dr. Thompson's main points.
Virtual leaders should manage by deliverables. Great virtual leaders leave space for employees to be self-accountable. It's important to make employees feel invested in the company, and virtual leaders should create opportunities for interaction.
With virtual work, business owners have an opportunity to rethink and reshape their relationships with their teams. This will help develop new ways to achieve goals and create a productive, engaged working environment. Remember, the new normal, it's up to us. That's it for this episode of Money Moves JA, brought to you in partnership with Exim Bank's Business Advisory Service, giving you the tools to grow your business. Visit their website, eximbankja.com. I'm Kalila Reynolds. Until next time.
Let's get this money.